Bailey, can we get a roll call?
Councilmember Backus.
Here.
Councilmember Bain. Here. Councilmember Husnick.
Here.
Councilmember Eigner.
Here.
And Mayor Winnick.
Here. I'd have to ask everyone to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, I'll look for approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Do we have a second? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. And
Do you want to have them sign or just want to call them?
I can just call you. Dick Cheetah.
Dick Cheetah, 21833 Healy, Forest Lake. I know that you're going to get a presentation this evening on the current status and the direction from the school district's levy. I've talked to the superintendent, and I've requested that a lot of the information that's in the audit should be presented to the public. I think it's very important that the public, it's not the outcome of the election, it's how well the electorate is informed. And there's many items, and I just jotted down a handful of items that, of the 138 pages of audit, which took a little time to read and put into perspective. But I think as a citizen, the areas that I'm concerned about $327 million worth of long-term debt. That has to be paid, and that's paid on a basis over a number of years, of course, but it's a very large debt. That amounts to about $7,500 per capita for every man, woman, and child in the school district. The other issue is that the amount of dollars that are being spent per student. And to me, the school cannot get by without their buildings and the rest of the equipment that they have in order to educate. And so if you take the total expenditures and divide it by the number of students, it's a cost per student, $14,000 plus. The statement always has been made that we're not keeping up with the costs, or the base from the state is not keeping up. But over the last 5-year period, they've built in a 2% increase every year, plus any amount of dollars that the legislature puts on the table. I think that the fact that we have a lot of obligations that trickle out, long-term liabilities, long-term pension obligations, et cetera. But I think that it would be much more understandable by the public if they had the information. And it seems like it's always in a situation where information is only put out there that benefits the cause of whoever is delivering the information. And I think that's a little bit on the unfair side. So I've requested, and I think Superintendent Massey will attest to it, I've requested information, and he's kindly given it. But I think that just giving it to me, I'm only one voter. I think it's important for this community to have transparency and have all the information on the table so that when they make a decision on whether or not they're going to spend money, not only just the grid that tells you how much your house is going to go up, but make it real simple. If your house is worth $200,000 and the dollar value of the referendum is $130 per $100,000 worth of value, okay, that's 2 times 130. Your taxes go up $260 if those numbers are relatively accurate. And so I think it's important that we inform the public and that it's just not a presentation. I've also requested that the $143 million that was passed in the last go-around in 2015, that the distribution of those dollars, how many dollars went to the issue of deferred maintenance, and how many dollars went to the issue of current expansions? It's easy enough. I mean, you can divulge that, or you can go to City Hall. That's, find out what the building permit was. Was the building permit for $10 million? Okay, that's what was spent on that item. It's simple. It's not difficult. I think there's a number of issues that should be clarified and not just put into a marketing program.
We can get you to wrap it up.
We've lost, in effect, since 1999, 2000 year, which was the peak, the enrollment is down 2,000 students. 2,000 students, hey, figure it out for yourself. That's what, $8 million a year in lost revenue? Things have to be clear. I'm not interested so much in the outcome as long as I feel that an informed public was given the opportunity to know what they're getting into. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Jay Littlejohn? Are you with one of the carriers?
Yes, I'm an attorney representing Verizon Wireless. I'm just introducing myself. I'll be here if there are questions when our item
I'm
comes
going to
up.
ask if you wanted to defer to
Yeah.
the subject. or
Yes,
not.
thank you.
All right. Mr. Schaefer.
Heavy on the mister, I don't hear that much. Anyway, there's a word that seems to be forgotten in this area, savings. City council don't save it, the planning commission sure don't, and the schools don't. If they've got less students and more costs, seems something wrong. And this is gonna be a stupid question, but I haven't had any kids in any schools for over 30 years. How long do I pay? Does anybody know? Forever? Well, what if somebody only lives 60 years and I live 80? They owe 20 years from their estate, don't they? At least they should be to make this equal. They're getting more benefit by dying, the darn fools. But anyway, let's see if we can't save some money and make life a little easier for the rest of us. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And that closes up open forum. Just to point one thing out, though, not that council probably wants to brag, but our auditors were here. We came in about $1 million surplus at the city of Forest Lake last budget cycle. So, well, we'll see what happens this budget cycle, but we'll try and get some of it back to you anyway.
Check is in the mail, right?
There you go. All right, let's move on to consent agenda. Look for a motion to approve it or changes there too.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda as printed.
All right, do we have a second on that?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Dr. Massey, welcome.
Mayor, Council, thank you for the opportunity. I have to be a bit transparent that my intention tonight is not talk about the referendum, but to give you a few key updates from the school district and give you an update on recent construction projects so that you have some background on all the various work going on throughout the district. But I would say, in response to to Mr. Cheetah and the other person speaking here tonight, that our district, I would contend, has two key responsibilities. One, to provide extraordinary value to the citizens of our community. And number two, to be transparent in how we do that. Transparent in our numbers, transparent in our process, and we remain committed to do that. When there are questions about our budget, about our audit, I invite people in, we have conversations, we open the books. Our audits are on our website. Our budget information is on our website. We'll continue to have open dialogue because there is no intent to be secretive about the dollars that we're spending or the way in which our dollars are spent. Moving forward, if I can highlight a few things here. Before I get into the construction, I'd like to point out that all of our 7 elementary schools over time have been named Schools of Excellence. Our district has recently received the Minnesota Positive Behavior Intervention and Supports District Award. I would add one of only 4 districts in the entire state to be recognized for that work around social emotional health and school culture, around responsibility, around positive behavior, consequences, holding kids accountable to learning. I would also add that recently, this past year, we were ranked as a high school 36 in the state of Minnesota and 1,825th nationwide of over 40,000 high schools in the nation. Again, our interest is to provide extreme value to the citizens and the residents of our school district, and I would offer that with that kind of ranking and recognition for our student achievement is a testimony to that work. For those of you who have recently taken or remember taking or who have had children recently take the ACT, you know how arduous it is to get a perfect score. At our high school just last year, we had 3 perfect scores out of the number of students, 1,500 plus students. There's few high schools in the nation with that kind of a ratio of that kind of achievement on the ACT. We've also had 7 students named National Merit Scholarship finalists as well. And this past May, when we graduated, the community provided through local colleges, Community Scholarship Foundation, local scholarships. We recognized over $3.85 million of scholarships for our 500 plus graduates out of Forest Lake High School. On to the bond referendum. In 2015, the community voted to support a $143 million bond referendum. We all know, I would add, that when your principal brings in $143 million in bonds, that over time, just like a mortgage, that accrues. And in the case of our bond and our debt, that does add up, and that's not a mystery and shouldn't be a mystery to anybody on how those bonds work. Those bonds are well at work today throughout the school district. Every building in the school district is receiving an upgrade. Those upgrades include, first and foremost, in all of our buildings that have students, school safety features, and I'll talk about those in just a minute. Upgrades to heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems throughout all of our buildings. Energy efficiency systems with windows, the HVAC systems, roof repairs. Sorry, I mentioned school safety twice there. Classroom improvements throughout all of our schools, improvements to school sites, water drainage, site improvements throughout, and of course, improved learning spaces. One of the visions driving the 2015 bond campaign was to create a unified secondary campus. And we've accomplished that by bringing all 7th and 8th graders to the building formerly known as Century Junior High, now known as Forest Lake Area Middle School. So all 7th and 8th graders throughout the district Starting this September, we'll be at Forest Lake Area Middle School, and all ninth graders from our junior high will be at our high school, creating a 9-12 high school system. I might add that most high schools throughout the state are 9-12. State standards are based on grades 9 through 12. It is a really important structure, student structure for us to have by way of student learning and helping students meet state requirements. So on to our buildings. I'll work fairly quickly through these slides. Let me add, however, as I start these slides on our building, that we're looking at a day in September, a Saturday, where we're going to have open house throughout all of our construction projects. And we'll have information and marketing information to our public for that open house. This is a picture of Century Junior High with the addition to the left side of this slide here off of the main office area of Century Junior High School, now again Forest Lake Area Middle School. You might ask why an addition? The reason for the addition is we're bringing 250 additional students to the middle school, and we need additional classroom space for the additional number of students. We also, here, let me show this piece here. When you look at the front of that building, you saw a glass structure looking into the new part of that addition, and that is what you're looking at there is flexible learning space for students. We have made a commitment throughout these secondary projects to create alternative ways in which students can learn, ways in which students can gather, work collaboratively, working on problem solving, working in a non-traditional classroom setting, but in an environment like this where they're able to collaborate and work together. These are the two highlighted sections at the middle school, with the addition to the upper left on the slide and the gym addition to the bottom part of this slide. All of those 250 additional students need physical education every day. And one gym at the junior high, at the middle school, was insufficient to meet those needs, hence the addition of a small gym. When we built the field house at the high school, and we brought the student parking lot to the south at the high school, we actually had to take out 2 ball fields. And those of you who are involved in athletics know how precious green space and ball fields are. Those ball fields have been replaced and repurposed at Century, now Forest Lake Area Middle School. So those are the renderings of the 2 additional ball fields created at the middle school. This is a picture of the field house at the high school. Again, you might be asking yourself, that's an awfully big structure for the enrollment. What I would point out is by bringing 9th grade to the high school, we're bringing close to 500 more students into the high school. We need additional classroom space and physical education space. This space, in addition to the main competition gym, the field house, the south end of the field house with the north end being tied up with gymnastics in the winter, these additional 3 basketball courts meet the need of the physical education needs of the additional students at the high school. The added value, although this isn't the purpose for this addition, the added value is we are holding tournaments on a regular basis, volleyball tournaments, basketball tournaments, bringing countless people to the community where they're shopping, buying gas, eating in restaurants, staying in hotels. It's a community added asset in my view. I mentioned safe and secure entry systems and safety features at all of our schools. This is the new Door 1 main entrance at the high school. And you'll see that there's a set of atrium doors at the entry of this new addition. And another view of that, when you get inside that vestibule, there's another set of doors to the right, the bottom right of this slide. You'll see a glass door that goes all the way across that atrium with the entry into the office. Those doors are locked. Once students get in the building, all doors are locked throughout the high school and at all of our schools. And the only way to gain access is to get buzzed in by somebody who is monitoring that door. If there is suspicious activity at that door, we're contacting our liaison officer, school administration. They will deal with that person at the door. So again, All of our buildings, once students enter, are locked down. In essence, we're in a contained situation where nobody has access to that building without being buzzed in. And that is the case at the middle school and all of our elementary schools. You will see this being a primary topic at schools across the country, given the recent school shootings that we've seen. So we're ahead of the curve, if you will, in implementing these kind of safe and secure entry systems. Most of us can harken back to our days in high school and might even be able to go to our high school and go to the locker we used at our high school. You might even remember your locker number or your locker combination. I'm here to tell you that kids don't use lockers anymore. We have, in fact, I've had 3 boys go through the high school, and not a single one of them could tell you their locker number or their locker combination because they don't use it. They leave their jacket in their car, they don't wear a jacket, they carry their book bag. Because of that, we've been able to eliminate 2 locker bays and create alternative flexible seating arrangements for students. This is actually the locker bay outside of the auditorium, on the west side of the auditorium. Once again, flexible seating arrangements for kids to gather before school, after school, between classes, and quite honestly, to collaborate, work collectively on projects, work on problem-solving activities. This is a picture of the 2-story addition that you see on the east side of the building. The east side is, and the 2-story addition is our science and agriculture wing. The quick story behind that is, and as I mentioned before, we needed to add additional classroom space at the high school. The original concept was to add classrooms on the west and the east end, 1-level general purpose classrooms. As we had conversation, we asked the question, could we build a 2-story addition versus 2 1-story additions? The answer was yes, and it's more cost effective, and you can do more aesthetically and architecturally with a 2-story addition. That set in motion the conversation about a 2-story addition. We also had plans to renovate our science space. That was 1972 infrastructure. It was in sorry need of improvement. So we asked the question, is it expensive to renovate science? The quick answer was, it's the most expensive renovation project you can do. That led to the question, could our 2-story science addition be a science wing? In other words, build new science versus renovate science. And the cost savings was significant with that decision. So we've revamped our existing science space for general purpose classrooms and created new science space. This is a picture of one of our upstairs biology rooms. And you can see on the right-hand side, there's a glass window. That glass window actually, jumping ahead here, looks into the science wing, or this science lab. We had a lot of conversation about the best way to do science, if you will. The original plan was for 4 biology classrooms and 4 biology labs, 4 chemistry labs, and 4 chemistry classrooms, 8 labs overall. In working with our science staff and the way they collaborate around science, we decided to build 2 biology labs and 2 chemistry labs with 2 classrooms on either side. The fact is, 2 science teachers, 2 biology teachers are not using the lab at the same time. So let's not build 4, having them empty half the time. Instead, we built 2 biology labs that are used 4 to 5 days a week versus 2 days a week. The savings was close to $1 million with that decision. That was not driven solely by economics, although there's a great economic benefit. It was driven primarily because our teachers who collaborate around science felt that that was a better way to do science. This is a picture of a conference space in the science wing. Again, space for small groups of students to do projects, work independently, work collaboratively on classroom projects. Another renovated space, an existing math and science wing, our old science wing, repurposed classrooms and flexible learning space for students. We have a state award-winning, national award-winning agriculture program. As part of our science edition, we have 2 science or agriculture classrooms with workspace that leads into a new greenhouse. Again, a state leading and national leading agriculture program, which is a real hallmark for our school district and the community. This is a unique feature that is actually a transition from the old part of the building to the new addition, which was essentially going to be dead space or a hall, and we asked the question, could we build learning stairs in that space? And you can see that the learning stairs creates a wonderful space to bring kids together. This is 75 plus students in an engineering, manufacturing career presentation presented by engineers and manufacturers in our community. I would point out, and you might notice that there are plenty of girls in that picture representing the new wave of engineering and bringing our female students into engineering. Again, wonderful use of the space. This space is used by the community. It's used by clubs, sports teams, classes. When the two classes are having a similar lecture, they'll often gather in this space. And that takes me through my presentation, and I'm open for any questions.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Massey. Great presentation. I'll open it up to the council for any questions.
Yeah, Dr. Massey took, I'm the liaison, so I was going to make a report on it, but he's already done that for me tonight, so. And,
There we go.
And I just want to thank Dr. Massey and the school board for putting up with me for the last year and a half, so.
Yeah, it's great to see you in the audience.
So,
The presentation was good.
Thank you.
or, go ahead, Ed.
I do have a couple. I'd like to applaud the people that made a decision to go to 2 labs versus 4.
Yeah.
And, it sounds like there's more to it than just a building. It's how the building is used. But what I didn't see in those labs aren't there any, like here, computer hookups? It looked like just plain tables.
Yeah, the actual lab are lab stations. That's where kids are mixing chemicals and doing lab experiments, so you're not going to see the
I'm talking
USB
about
ports.
where you had the nice little nooks for them to meet and discuss and.
Yeah. All of our workstations, laptops that students may have are all Wi-Fi, so we don't need the actual.
Oh, so you don't need it.
Yeah, we don't need the USB or the Cat5 connections. Lots of power in those spaces, though, because kids don't plug their computers in at night.
Right. So that's what I was wondering, because
Yeah.
this building is just loaded with them.
Yeah, we have those power outlets throughout.
Thank you.
Mike, I was just gonna kind of roll into the same question, but, it is surprising kids don't use lockers anymore. Are there still some available for?
Sure.
If
Yeah,
they
we
want?
kept 50% of the lockers, 55% of the lockers. So all 9th and 10th graders will be assigned a locker, and then upon request, any junior or senior that wants a locker.
Okay.
Yep, so any student that wants a locker or needs a locker will have a locker.
And just going by personal experience with my own kids, and the backpacks they bring home seem like they weigh about 80 pounds apiece.
They do weigh 80 pounds. And they never can come home and say, I don't have my homework, because it's in
Exactly.
my locker. It's always in the book bag.
So is there kind of a push towards going a lot more electronic for textbooks, different things like that, than where we're at now?
I would say that we're not far from that day where there'll be more and more electronic classroom, textbook, other resources available. Interestingly, our science department has amongst the highest science scores in the state of Minnesota. They wrote their own textbook through shareware software. They got on a science website, created their own textbook that tailors their content to the state standards that they're teaching and kids are assessed on. And through that and a couple of other things I don't have time to get into here, have among the highest test scores in the state of Minnesota. It's impressive. So there's a place for electronic resources. There's also a place for print material, and we're in a kind of a hybrid system today.
Okay. And my last question before I turn it over again, as far as, the gymnasiums and the outdoor fields and things like that go, how are they available are they available to the public as well? And where I'm going with that is with our fields here and with FLA and, how can we kind of coordinate all that into one point in the community to go to make sure those tournaments are we have enough space here for those tournaments, or draw more of them even, too.
Yeah, Corey McKinnon is our Director of Community Education. Stephanie Groff is our scheduler through Community Education. It might be bringing key resources, key folks together from the city, FLA, the district, and examine whether or not we have the right mechanisms in place to
Yeah,
fully
kinda get a
maximize our
list of
space.
Available assets and how to
Yeah.
determine them.
Yeah, all of our spaces are available after 6 PM when our high school sports teams are done for the day. So they're heavily used well into the evening.
Sounds great.
I did have another question on the field house, and maybe it wasn't apparent in the picture, but you had mentioned that that would be a draw for tournaments and things of that nature. I didn't see any seating. Is there,
Yeah, there's seating on the far south end, and that's where gymnastics equipment will be set up in the winter. There's a bank of bleachers there. You know, we faced a real dilemma with the structure. Do we go bigger and add significant cost? Or do we bring chairs out for tournaments? And we've elected to bring the chairs out that we need for youth tournaments. So it's
there
not a
is no-
spectator gym.
there's no spectator-type pull-out seating?
There is not.
Okay.
No.
I just thought that was strange. If you're going to have a tournament, where do the parents and everybody else
Yeah,
comes
what we
to
did
watch?
do is we created quite a distance between the side courts.
So
So
for
there's a
chairs.
bank of chairs on either side. We roll out a, kind of a rubber tarp so we don't damage the floor, and there's ample seating when we use the temporary seating.
Did I hear too, in the main gym, you were replacing the bleachers, or?
There's no plan to do that. We would love to do that. We replaced the gym floor 4 or 5 years ago, all with donated dollars. We'd love to do the bleachers, but that's a project for down the road.
Okay.
I did have one more question, and when Mr. Cheetah spoke, he said since 1999, I believe he used, enrollment is down 2,000 students. But yet, you're saying that there's an increase by combining the ninth graders, 500 ninth graders, is that correct?
We have about 500 students per grade.
500 per grade.
Yep, so we're bringing all
But the-
ninth
But
graders.
the total enrollment for the school district is up, down, or where is it?
We lose about 50 to 75 students a year currently. We're hoping that that will stabilize here. You know, there's a unique balance that goes with that, because if we want to offer, say we lose 75 students next year, they're not all going to be from the same school. So cutting 3 teachers from one school to account for 75 students is hard to do. Running an agriculture program, a manufacturing program, career tech ed programs, music programs, you need those programs whether you have 2,000 more students or less. Yes, you'll need more staff in those programs, but the dilemma becomes, when do we start cutting those programs because we've lost enrollment and then the revenue that comes with that. So that balance of offering that breadth of programming is also a challenge.
The other thing I had a question on, it was the closing of the Montessori school.
Yes.
And I believe one of your quotes was that one of the questions from the parent was, if you close that school, it's going to increase the class sizes on moving them into the existing schools. But your comment was that we would have smaller class sizes. I'm a little confused as to.
I don't recall saying we'd have smaller class sizes. For the number of students that would, the 100 students that would enroll in any of our 7 other elementary schools across kindergarten through 6th grade in all those schools, it would be 2 to 3 students per grade, or up to 2 to 3 students per class. So it would be an increase, but it'd be a nominal increase and an increase we could absorb within our current
So
staffing.
the average class size will be, what, 30-ish, less than 30, or where?
It'll be less than 30. It'll be approaching 30 in 6th grade, 5th grade, and we try to keep kindergarten 1, 2 down because of the critical literacy and math learning that happens at those grades. Mid-20s, 26 by grades 3 and 4.
And then my last question, I don't want to take up all the time, is if enrollment's down 2,000 students, how come there hasn't been more school closings?
You know, this is my first year on this job. I can't answer that for the past, but what I would tell you is what's unique about our district is our elementary schools are community schools. And closing Scandia Elementary or Forest Lake Elementary or Columbus or Wyoming or Linwood or Wyoming or Lino Lakes, those are hallmarks, those are landmarks in those communities. It's different perhaps in other districts where they have elementary schools every third block and you can disperse enrollment and they don't have that community anchor feel. So I think that's part of the dilemma as well. But as enrollment continues to shift, we have to continue to look at those.
Thank you.
I had a question in regards to the field house. With the track not being in the best shape, and the winters we've been having lingering into summer, why didn't you include a half track inside that field house structure? Get more use out of that space.
Yeah. If I could bring this slide back up, you'll see that we have 3 lanes on the actual surface of that gym. We talked about an upper level track. We asked our FIAD staff if they would use it, and the answer was, we don't think so. Our track program said, I don't think so. So we saved $1 million by not adding that track. Instead, we put lanes on the surface, and that's used for FIAD. It's used after school for early spring training for track, more so than an upper track with carpet or whatever the surface might be.
I know you're not here to talk about the levy, but it was mentioned in open forum comments. If people wanted more information on the levy and what's that included, where's the best place to get that information?
Yeah, FLAschools.org is our website. There's a button right on that website that will take you to our referendum page.
Okay.
Again, we're really committed to putting all the information out there, readable, transparent, tax impact, all that information. We want an informed public.
Thank you.
I'm gonna hit you with a couple of hard ones here, but maybe it's more for Chief Peterson. School safety.
Yes.
Somebody wanders onto your property that doesn't belong there, or our property, whatever, school property. Are they trespassing at that point? Or, I mean, is there, how do we, is there things we can do now to improve safety at the schools by, maybe making a resolution or something? But I mean, somebody that doesn't belong there wanders onto property, maybe they haven't entered the building yet, but can we get our school officers on that? I mean, I think they're doing a great job, but how can we improve that for you?
Yeah, I'll definitely defer to the expert on this topic, but what I would tell you is a person on our campus that does not have business on our campus has no business being on our campus. With that person will be asked to leave, our liaison officers will get involved, or we'll be calling the police directly.
But are they trespassing since it's a school property or not? or-
Yeah, yep, they can be trespassed. We have protocols in place with the schools. We work very closely with them, as you know, the police department. We have liaison officers in the schools. And yeah, there are protocols that we utilize. And every situation might be different too, depending on who that individual is, why are they there? Is there a restraining order against that individual? Is there not? Is it a first-time occurrence? There are a lot of different factors that go into play. But yeah, we have those protocols in place already, and we're always reviewing them and updating them when necessary. And I think we have a fantastic relationship with the schools. And we also worked with them hand in hand when they were going over the remodeling of the schools for the safety of the kids and the teachers and administration. And so, yeah, we're constantly reviewing those and updating them when necessary.
All right, thank you, Chief. Oh, Ed.
I got a question along with the security. You mentioned that, and you showed the doors are closed, other than in the morning when the students come to class, and then I presume in the evening when they leave. Is there anything, do they wear, like a monitor? I mean, if you go to First Bank downtown, you got it. No one can go into that complex without signing in and getting some kind of ticket that gets scanned if you want to go into that building. Is there nothing for the students to show they're a student?
We're actually just started a conversation around student IDs that they would wear and have with them.
Because I would assume that somebody that, especially a disgruntled student or somebody that wants to do a school shooting, he's going to walk in with the crowd. He's not coming in by himself.
We know we're vulnerable, and hence the need for active supervision, hence the need for liaison officers. You renewed that contract recently. We're committed to making sure we have resource officers in our secondary buildings. We're
If you were to
committed to that.
stop anybody coming through that door, they don't have to present an ID?
Not when the school is open, correct.
Crazy.
Is there just that one entrance for morning, kids coming in?
The only entrance is the back door in the student lot and the front door that is monitored by staff. Yep.
All right. Last question, but Forest Lake area, or Century Junior High got renamed Forest Lake Middle School.
Correct.
Can you maybe have a contest with the kids to come up with a better name than Forest Lake Middle School? It just seems like, here it is, you know, I mean, I think, you know, community-wise, I think, you know, to put some pride in there and come up with something that.
Now, you're asking that question as we print banners and we put our website up there. What I would say is that we did have a lot of conversation around that. We had different committees have conversation. There were a lot of names that were offered and presented. At the end of the day, we felt that identifying who we are, Forest Lake area, made the most sense. So rather than Goodview or some other name that might resonate, we felt naming the school for the community we live in made the most sense.
Okay. Any other?
I got one more, and it's probably gonna open up an old wound. But this particular council, a previous council to this one, took a lot of heat for not allowing the YMCA to work with the schools for that diving, swim competition thing. And all this money, 147 million, nothing was done about aquatics?
We've retained the pool. There was original conversation about eliminating the pool. We've retained the pool. We've upgraded the infrastructure of the pool, the mechanisms, but we did not build a new pool, no.
No. But no diving well, nothing like that?
No.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other questions for Blaine?
Quick one. Can they hold meets at that pool? Is that
Yes,
large-
we do. Yep,
It's large enough?
yep.
Yeah, and I heard the track is not able to hold meets. Is that true or false?
I've been at the secondary system for 14 years as a principal at the high school. My first year as superintendent, I've never attended a home track meet.
We got plans to renovate either, I mean, a new diving pool, track and field complex.
Yeah, the track and field were part of a bond referendum this past election. They were part of a second question on the 2015 referendum. Both failed. So it's out there as a need that we need to continue to explore ways to address. It's quite unfortunate, honestly, that we don't have a track for the community to use and for our track teams to use.
Little stretch, but is the football field good to go, or is that gonna be planned for future use?
Our football field needs a lot of work. And that was part of the bond that failed as well.
Was that bond including the track and the football field in the one?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Massey.
Yep. Mayor and council, thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Good evening. All right, Donovan, do you want to take us through the small cell ordinance?
Yes, sir. Mayor, members of council, I'd like to present to you a ordinance. This would be an amendment to the zoning ordinance that would allow small wireless facilities and the small wireless facility structures in commercial industrial districts as a permitted use with conditions, and in zoning districts with single-family zoning as a conditional use permit. And this is something that went through the Planning Commission, was subject of a city council workshop in June. It's now presented with the change that recommended by council to remove any sort of setbacks for the small wireless structures, support structures. And so what you have before you is the ordinance, drafted by the city attorney, has the change that you asked for. There's one other change I'd like to recommend, and that's after following conversations with the city engineer, we realized that we'd want to put a condition for the appearance of and material for the new wireless support structures. So staff recommends that text, "New wireless support structures shall be made of formed or cast aluminum with color finalized upon individual reviews," to be added as a condition to both of those conditions for both commercial industrial districts and zoning districts with single-family zoning. Happy to take any questions from the city council.
All right, thank you. I'm just going to call on Jay Littlejohn. If you have any input, you kind of reserve some time on the open forum.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And, thanks to staff and the city attorney's office for working on the ordinance. I know it's been a long slog so far, and there's still a couple more phases to go. I don't really have a good answer for the question of aluminum. Mr. Hart and I were talking before the meeting. I don't know. Our primary concern is that the poles have sufficient strength, and so that, you know, if whatever the material is, whether it's steel, stainless steel, or you know, whatever kind of steel is used as opposed to aluminum, I don't know. I know that one of the things that we often do is replace an existing pole because it's, believe it or not, it's less expensive to buy a brand new pole than it is to hire a structural engineer to provide a structural study on an existing pole. When a new pole is put in place, we would want to have that match the appearance, certainly, of whatever other poles are in the line. But as to, you know, whether the aluminum could be a sufficient strength, I just don't know the answer to that. Our concern is that we don't care about the material as long as the appearance is similar and there's sufficient structural capacity to support both the city's lights that would be on the pole and those small wireless facilities. And I can answer any other questions. You know, I've been representing this client and its predecessor since 1988, so there's been a lot of water under the bridge. Maybe I can answer anything else you have.
All right, thank you. I know we've spent I think we've spent a lot of time on this, and I think we're all in kind of agreement on it to begin with. I do have a little bit of question on, you know, designating it aluminum only. I don't know how that's going to react with their equipment, but, you know, something that's cosmetically acceptable, I'm fine with that. Ryan?
Just to add, so our intent is to basically not allow wood poles, because obviously where these structures are gonna go, they're gonna be in high traveled areas, and last thing we wanna do is flood the right-of-way with wood poles. This language was simply taken out of the Connexus Energy pole booklet that we have on our standard poles. I think we could be open to new wireless support structures shall be made of formed or cast aluminum or similar type of material with color finalized upon individual reviews. But the whole purpose and discussion was not to all of a sudden have a number of wood poles in some of our highest traveled areas where the data would be used and these poles would be located.
Along the lines of that, is there anything in the ordinance that would require them to keep them upkept aesthetically? Not that they got flaking paint, falling apart, things like that? Do you have any provisions to make sure that they are well kept?
That is, actually, that is in the right-of-way, comprehensive right-of-way ordinance draft. And that'll be subject of the workshop next week. We'll discuss that and the other means the city both protects its interests and the telecom's interests for those facilities.
Ed?
Donovan, could that be like a build-back situation? When we maintain our poles, you're not gonna just paint one, you're gonna paint them all, whatever you're doing.
It could be. Right now, we do have language that mostly related to if there's any sort of maintenance on the pole, that essentially the renter has to remove their facilities. You know, we give them adequate notice, but so there's no added cost to the city for any sort of co-locations.
But I'm just thinking, if we were gonna say we're gonna paint we have city poles down there too, right? Those ornate poles, those are ours, right?
Yeah, along Broadway.
Along Broadway?
And
So if you're gonna, we say it's time to redo them all, paint them nice Susan blue again.
we may
You'd wanna do them all at one time. I mean, you wouldn't just paint our poles and then leave their poles alone, you know, like.
well, I mean, they're still actually, I mean, they're pretty much, they're dedicated, they're publicly dedicated, I believe. upon construction. And basically, you know, but they still retain ownership, of course, of the actual facility. I mean, that's something we can look into, but I think state statute is pretty limited on what charges municipalities can charge, you know, the leasers. I mean, the lease rate is set, and it has to be a real definite connection between the need to paint them and the actual, you know, within the lease, I guess.
Yeah, if I may just add to that, so there are a couple of different moving pieces, as Donovan alluded to here, and as Mr. Littlejohn did as well. What you have before you is this ordinance that would amend the city code, the zoning ordinance related to the placement of these types of facilities. But there are additional pieces to the puzzle that will be coming before the council for review that would help provide some perhaps greater detail and understanding as far as how this would play out. So in some situations, the poles would be owned by the private utility carrier themselves. And in that case, there is not a co-location agreement because you're not placing anything on top of a city-owned pole. So a lot of the things such as maintenance, and you have to remove it if we can paint it, that goes and relates to city-owned small wireless support structures or wireless support structures. But these essentially are privately owned facilities and privately owned poles. So it's a little bit different in that respect. Things that you will be seeing shortly at upcoming work sessions will include the right-of-way ordinance, which will include permits and things like that related to the placement of these facilities and right-of-way permits, as well as the co-location agreement, which is essentially the contract between the city and the wireless provider if they're going to place a wireless facility, a small wireless facility, on a city-owned wireless support structure, for lack of a better word, which could be a light pole, it could be a number of different structures. So a lot of different pieces here, and I hope that helps answer and provide some clarification about whether you're in the context of a privately owned pole versus a city-owned pole, what the city would be requiring the wireless service provider to do with respect to maintenance or to remove things so the city can maintain the pole.
All right.
I have a process question for Donovan. So the residential, anything that's in a residential zone is going to require a conditional use permit. Is there public notification when that happens? Walk me through maybe the process of what would that look like if I were a neighbor and this were going to be in the right of way on my street?
Yeah, currently, conditional use permits require a neighborhood meeting and then the public notification process. So then if it's in a more, you know, lower density, residential density area, it'd be 1,000 feet of proximity, you know, of addresses, more dense area, 350 feet radius. And then, you know, public hearing with planning commission review.
So standard process of what we use today.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions? If not, I'll look for a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the small wireless facility ordinance. We don't have a number on this, but as recommended by staff with the recommended change for materials.
All right, thank you.
I'll second it.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, and Dave, are you gonna take us through the stormwater update?
Yep. Good evening, Mayor and members of council. Just circling back from the workshop from 2 weeks ago, or in end of June, the stormwater updates that are needed to stay in line with our MS4 permit through the MPCA. The updates have been reviewed by the stormwater consultant from Bolton and Mink and also the city attorney. So unless you have any other questions, I recommend approving these ordinance updates.
Yeah, I seen a notice come through that we are having a stormwater tour coming up as well.
Yep. I think it's the first or second week in September.
September? Yeah.
September 11th at 4 o'clock.
All right. Any other questions for Dave?
Just posted on that. Thanks, Dan.
All right. And the ordinance number for this?
It'll be 677.
Okay. for a motion for ordinance 677.
I'll make the motion that we approve ordinance 677 stormwater.
All right,
I'll second the motion.
motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Dave. Safe routes to school, Ryan, can you take us through that one?
Mayor, City Council, our application, our grant application for the pedestrian grade separated along with the roundabout at Highway 97 Goodview is due Friday. This is simply agenda item. Second part of my page here is the letter of support that we would have executed by the mayor and basically supporting the improvements and being able to implement within the grant application. We have already obtained letters of support from the school district, Superintendent Massey and Police Chief Peterson, and we hope to also obtain one from MnDOT, which I didn't state in my letter, I saw, and then also one from Washington County. So again, the max award was $1 million. As we went through the options, the consensus of the city council was to pursue the underpass, and then direction of you guys was given to meet with the school district. Dan Undum and myself met with Dr. Massey and Larry Martini with the school district, and Chief of Police was there as well, and went through the cost estimates, the concepts, and then upon follow-up of that meeting, I provided several local examples to the school district on some underpasses. Closest one to us right now tonight is one in Chisago City under Highway 8, and then several others. But so tonight we're just looking for support of executing a letter of support to implement within the grant application that we hope to submit Friday.
And it's just labeled as grade separated, but are we specifically going for the underpass then?
Just keeping it all flexible.
Okay. And did the school have a preference?
They just asked that's in our letter that we didn't use either or, so their letter basically is on behalf of the Forest Lake area schools. I'm happy to express my support for the 2018 Regional Solicitation Safe Routes to School application being submitted by the City of Forest Lake. Project improvements will enhance our pedestrian facilities and address safety concerns that have been raised by parents and community members.
So it is different than we discussed. Well, a tunnel was $1 million and a bridge was $2.5 million.
So the application indicates, so does the grant application include the mock-up? Because doesn't the mock-up indicate an underpass?
We'll have to include a detailed cost estimate and the concept of what we're going for. So, and if we deviated from that in the future or location,
Right.
that would have to go through another process. Because you can see, we included the grant application and all the categories and how they score and how detailed the points are per each section. So in essence, if you relocated, say, you want to move the bridge or underpass, say, down to Harrow, obviously some of these scores would fall off because of your range away from the school.
So I read through the packet and read it as consistent with what we had discussed because it does indicate an underpass on the map. And the detail indicates, I guess it's indicated on the map.
Go ahead, Ed.
The question I have is, a letter from the school doesn't specify. Is there any advantage if that letter did specify to get out to being awarded the grant?
I think the intent of the letter clearly expresses the school's desire to participate in pedestrian safety improvements.
So it really doesn't matter?
I would say no.
Okay.
Ryan, this has been done in other cities? And what's been a response to
We've gone through the same process a handful of times in the last 5 years. School districts provided us letter of supports, the city, MnDOT, Washington County, and I think we've been pretty successful in the past on a lot of the grants we've attained. If you can see the infrastructure being built in the past and the project that just started here this year.
I guess I was alluding more to the idea of having a underpass rather than a bridge or something like that. Or use other places.
They're both, the thought is you're crossing the major highway without touching foot on the highway. When we went through the costs, we're $1 million difference. I don't have another $1 million. I don't have a way to find you another $1 million. We got one shot at the underpass. We would know by January if we were successful. If not, you know, you still gotta move forward with the project, and you'd probably have to come back at a future with a different type of application or somehow close that funding gap to get a bridge someday, or I don't know, at that point, you know.
Well, based on that, I'd make a motion that we go ahead with the Safe Routes to School Regional Solicitation application as Ryan has presented.
I'll second for purposes of discussion.
Well, we have a motion, so we have to.
I'll
have a-
second for purposes of discussion. So I think it's important we need to do something for pedestrian facilities. And I know there's been a lot of conversation of, is it a bridge or is it an underpass? And I struggle a little, I recognize that there's some concern over an underpass. However, maybe my first question is for Ryan on timing of design concepts and so this is funding phase, we're in a grant application phase. When would we actually work on design and security features of if we were to use the underpass option?
Not
What
until we
time?
would know in January,
So, and we haven't done any of that work yet, right, on?
other than the concept to see if the grades would work.
Right. So overall concept is a sizable tunnel that is sizable enough to drive a vehicle through with a straight line of sight, is that right? And that's kind of current concept, and then other things around cameras or lighting, that would be part of the design phase at a future date, right? Is that
Yep.
right?
In the cost estimate, we included lighting the tunnel, security system, anti-graffiti coating, and then I know you brought up some questions about utility relocation. That was included in that estimate too, and still we were $1 million difference.
Okay. So I think it's important that we pursue that of all of the infrastructure needs we have in the city, an additional $1 million for the bridge. I can appreciate there's some need for that or some desire for that, but again, it's an additional $1 million and also a bridge that then we need to maintain. And then also, I still go back to the original neighborhood meetings. We were talking about different options, and there was some concern of whether kids would even use a bridge, recognizing that the topography requires a fair number of switchbacks, and kids might take the most direct route, which is right through the roundabout, which is what we absolutely don't want. So I guess I'm in support of us at least getting kids off of the mixing with traffic and at least taking an opportunity for the underpass, looking for a grant opportunity and reassessing overall design in January.
I agree with you. I think there's a huge need for this. I just want it plain and clear. I mean, it's well over $1 million difference, plus the long-term maintenance costs, everything else.
Right.
And that's why I want this application. I want to be transparent with everybody to start with. I don't want to see wiggle room to come up with, 12 different options later.
So you want confirmation it's going to be an underpass, and or
Well,
just
if
clarification?
if there was any other option at a comparable price, if we could get a bridge at a comparable price, but it seems like there's no possible way that's gonna happen. And so let's just end it right now and say, we're gonna put a tunnel.
The lay of the land is one of the issues there.
Mhm.
We'd have to so many turns and all the other things, and the bridge is kind of ground level when you get to the backside.
Well, and we're not talking a, 1,000-foot tunnel, we're
No.
talking a fairly short tunnel that's, what did you say, Brian, like 12 or 15 feet wide and 10+ feet high?
14 feet wide. Can't remember if they're 10 or 12 feet high.
So, it's a large thing, it's not a scary little dark hole in the ground.
Probably 100 feet long.
I don't think it's even 100 feet, is it?
Right away isn't probably not
Yeah.
Thought we were just over 100 feet.
So,
Because ultimately it would be built, you know, we talked about the lifespan of the structure and, you know, potential expansion of the roundabout in the future would certainly may probably occur someday before the life of the underpass structure. So it would be built so it would never, it wouldn't have to be extended. It would be outside that area. But it would be a clear, straight shot. It can't curve because it's a box culvert, so they're put in 6-foot sections at a time with a crane.
Ed?
So the roundabout's an approved project, no matter whether we have a bridge, tunnel, or nothing, right?
If you wanted to keep MinDOT's $1.4 million.
Right. So this is contingent, I would think the time to do it is when you're doing the roundabout, not coming back later and saying, now we need to do something different.
Or the only option later would be an expensive bridge.
Yeah. But at $1 million less, I mean, it seems like it's not, that's the way to go.
I'd definitely like to see this put through. I think some of the hesitation is after the grant shows up, someone might say, oh, $3 million, let's throw our other million at it and get the bridge. I don't want to see that happen. I think this is the best option for our citizens and dollars spent, so.
That's why I just want the clarification on the letter right now that it's not a grade separated crossing, it's a tunnel.
I haven't seen a bridge design that I've been comfortable with that students would use. Again, in concept, it's nice, but when you look at the switchbacks, they're significant, and I think you're talking about kids getting home or getting to class, and they're gonna jet right across is my concern. So let's give them a jet right across underneath.
It just makes a lot of sense because you can lengthen it or shorten it or whatever in the future, and any expansion of there, it's really cheap compared to having a bridge there getting in the way too. And I know it's, not everybody's gonna agree with that, but that's the nuts and bolts of it. It's a lot of money.
So we have a motion, we have a second. Are we going to make an amendment to that? Or do we want to let this motion fail and redo it?
We're just approving the letter of support right now, correct?
Yes.
I just want the letter of support that the city sends out to be much more specific on what we're looking for. Instead of just an at-grade crossing, we want to have a tunnel. Or a grade separated crossing.
Ryan, do you see any negative to changing the language?
No, we can change whatever we want in the city's letter. Just need a signed letter of support to be submitted with the application. It'd be nice to have by Thursday so we can incorporate into the application for Friday submittal. We could revise the letter for the mayor, and that would include specific language referencing an underpass per, an underpass.
I would accept that amendment.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
The underpass is already referenced in the accompanying diagram, and let's just be specific.
But let's not run the risk of letting this timeline go away.
I'll make a motion to amend the motion to.
Well, I'll accept the amendment.
All right, Bailey, you got all that?
I think so.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. These hardware invoices.
I'll make a motion to approve them.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
One abstaining?
All right. And Winnick Supply invoices.
I'll make a motion to approve those.
Second. Oh, sorry.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And one abstain. Takes us to staff updates. Donovan?
Yes, sir. I just want to report that the second Planning Commission public hearing on the comprehensive plan draft is scheduled for this Wednesday, July 11th at 7 p.m. And as we continue our public participation process with that, with the intention to bring it to council later this month.
Can I make a quick agenda request on that? The last meeting you had in the last planning commission, that was tucked after the Leela conversation, which went very long. Could we, for purposes of people from the public who might want to go, could you put that before Leela just to have the conversation first this time and then have the Leela conversation?
Certainly.
Thank you.
Anything else for Donovan? Chief Newman?
Mayor and members of the council, I'm still working on the estimates for a few different items. The last council meeting, we talked about obtaining additional repair estimates. I've talked to a broker to find out what's out there and available for used water tenders. I've reached out to a couple of our neighbors who have recently purchased new tenders to see what they're doing with their previous tenders and to find out if they're mechanically sound. And I did reach out to the DNR here right after our meeting, and the DNR actually does not provide any structural firefighting support as far as equipment to fire departments. So next city council workshop, I'm actually on the agenda next Monday. So at that time, I'll bring forth a bunch of different options. And then I've got some fire runs to discuss, but they were all police initiated, police department initiated, so I'll let Chief Peterson go over those.
Sure. Well, I got a just question before we let Chief Peterson go. Can we look at, the potential of starting a group now within your department or something to evaluate future equipment needs so that we can start incorporating that into our capital improvement plan? I think that, we've got significant costs of replacing equipment right now, but I think, as we've had a discussion before, there's needs for some new pieces of equipment. And so I would like to get that input of, what the future fire department's gonna look like as far as the pieces of equipment that you wanna have ready to respond to emergencies, so.
We can put that together.
All right, thank you. Chief any other questions for Chief Newman? Chief Peterson?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor and City Council members, good evening. As you know, and probably are aware, the Forest Lake Police Department has been very busy over the last several weeks. First off, just want to mention the July 4th celebration. It went very well. Our department responded to over 300 calls for service. And even with a few obstacles that we encountered, which included the new parade route and the severe storms that came through at the beginning of the parade, crowds were very well behaved and patient with us. Security at the American Legion and Vanelli's did a great job, and I think it's great to see the community coming together. And I have to admit, I was absolutely surprised. I thought once those thunderstorms came through, I didn't think there were going to be too many people out there, and it was amazing how packed it was. So every time I saw somebody, I said, happy 4th of July, and thanks for hanging in there. So I think that's great. I also want to publicly thank once again Forest Lake Public Works and Forest Lake Fire for all their work. I think a lot of people don't understand how much work goes into the 4th of July parade behind the scenes. And without them there and assisting us, there's no way we'd be able to pull this off and have such a safe event. So thank you to them. And last, as you're aware, the Forest Lake Police Department have responded to 2 incidents in the past 2 weeks where we requested the assistance of the Washington County SWAT team. And out of respect for the families, I don't plan on getting into any specifics in regards to those incidents right now. We have sent out press releases, but I definitely want to thank once again the Washington County SWAT team, Forest Lake Fire, North Ambulance personnel, and the Chisago County SWAT team for assisting us during those 2 incidents. And I definitely want to thank a huge thank you to the neighbors who were extremely patient and understanding of how severe and serious those incidents were. So definitely thank you to all the neighbors out there that were patient with us and understood what we were going through. And that's really all I have for you. Once again, I didn't want to get into too many specifics and in regards to those incidents.
Thank you, Chief, and thank everybody for all your efforts over the 4th of July, the long holiday weekend or week this year. It was one of the concerns with having it stretched out so far was, you know, what can happen anyway. It just gets to be a very long time, and some people get a lot shorter fuse towards the end, but it turned out really well, so thank you both.
Thank you.
Bailey.
Nothing from me, thank you.
All right, and welcome back, Dan.
Thank you. I'm still kind of digging out a little bit, so I have a very quick update tonight. Just a reminder that in August coming up here, we do have the budget workshops on Wednesdays, so make sure your calendars are marked for the budget workshops on Wednesday. And then if you haven't had a chance, make sure you check out the senior center doors. They are much better than the old doors there, and we are also looking at, I believe, either end of this week or sometime next week of putting the keyless locks on there as well, so that we'll actually have key card access to those doors as well. So we're gonna go through some programming up there to make sure that staff up there at the senior center and LATV know how to use the new keyless entry. So full new entry system at the senior center, so make sure you check that out if you get a chance, and that's all I have.
All right, thank you. Bridget.
Thank you, Your Honor. I did attend the legislative update for city attorneys, as I mentioned at the last meeting. Not a whole lot to report there. I think the big discussion was the increasing competitive bidding threshold, which Ryan had already advised the council of. And of course, the Janus decision came out the day before, so there's a lot of discussion about that, the Supreme Court decision in that particular case. But otherwise, nothing to report from that particular event. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Takes us down to Ryan.
Mayor, City Council, just give you some updates on some of the construction projects. As the 4th of July is now done, our projects can come into the neighborhoods that have been planned. So the 2018 street project started up today in the neighborhoods. All property owners were given notices so they know about the project, and inspectors' name and number contact. Safe Routes to School started some minor work today. Notices are being handed out there, and they'll proceed working kind of in the 3rd Street area. The double chip seal, if you've never seen that, want to watch that, I think we're tentatively scheduled for Wednesday to do that down at 190th. So that'll be done by this week as well. So a lot of things, really making some progress on this public project. So.
All right, any questions for Ryan? All right, and Dave.
Just to touch base on the lift station project, they are wrapping up on Township 14, which is the last station in the original bid. They're gonna leave for about 2 weeks to get the materials for the other 2 we added on, and they'll be back in 2 weeks and then start working on those other 2 additional. So they're well ahead of schedule. They have a lot of restoration work, but all the stations are online and running, so it's been a really very good project. Working on quotes for the street lighting and concrete staining, so I should have them most likely at the workshop, hopefully get you some good numbers for that.
All right, great. The lift station project, do we have potential to add another 1 or 2, or we used all our funding for that?
We don't want to exceed the 25% bidding law, so we better hold off.
Okay. And Dave, thank everybody at Public Works as well for everything they've done over the 4th of July too. I know you guys have been quite busy as well. So.
Yep, I definitely will. It's time to take a breath. I think with all the department heads, you kind of build up to that 4th, and now we can, get back to our normal routine. I think Al and Rick would agree. It's kind of a one thing off the list for the summer. So.
Well, and the parks and the medians, everything were cut nice, and the litter was picked up and did a great job. So, thank you. All right, council updates. Sam.
Well, aside from the 4th of July festivities that we joined in on, the meeting I made was with the school district. That was a week ago Thursday, and nothing earth-shattering in that particular meeting, and Dr. Massey pretty much expanded on what was going on at the school with the building and that sort of thing, so no other updates.
All right, thank you. Yeah.
No report. The airport commission meeting was canceled and I should say moved due to the holidays, so that'll be this coming Wednesdays. I'll have a report next time around.
That sounds great. Well, I did get a chance to see the new doors over there, Dan, at the senior center. I was able to attend a volunteer luncheon there, and definitely very appreciative of getting that accomplished. And seems like everything's running well over there right now. We still got a dishwasher question in the air, but that'll get taken care of soon. I am going to be meeting with Dr. Massey coming up here in a few days, just to sit down and see what we can coordinate with the city and the school, and see how we can both work together to accomplish a lot more and go from there. So let everybody know that. Attended quite a few of the 4th of July festivities, and other than a wet parade, it was a phenomenal show. Fireworks, I think, were some of the best I've seen in Forest Lake in a long time. And we'll be meeting with the EDA and a couple representatives from the Legion as well, to see how, again, the city can help them out and try and make it even bigger and better next year. So that's it for me. Blaine?
Nothing at this time.
Thank you.
I just attended the planning commission meeting that was at the end of June. I tabled a Leela CUP amendment for Headwaters. It'll be back on the agenda next week, actually this Wednesday, and then went over a first round reading of the draft comp plan, so.
All
nothing
right.
further. Thanks to everyone for a great 4th of July. I agree with your fireworks comments. They were fantastic, so nice to
Yeah.
see everybody. Good event.
All right. I will look for a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.